I am live. Yes, I am live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my weekly live Q&A. My name is Danny Segura, and like every week, I'll be answering your questions regarding everything surrounding the combat sports world and also everything outside of it. If you have any questions about that, um, a bit of some news. I got some news for you guys. Oh, by the way, I am a reporter for MMAJunkie.com, formerly MMAfighting.com. In case you didn't know, but if you're watching this, you probably know who I am. But for those that are watching this and don't have no clue who I am a drunk in quarantine that covers mixed martial arts for a living. So, yes, how this works is I'll be answering your questions, which I ask you to submit via Twitter. Then I'll be going over to the live chat and taking care of those. So Twitter gets priority, but not exclusivity. So I'll make sure to tackle those first. Sometimes there are some good questions on the chat, so I might go back and forth just to sort of keep some sort of order. But for the most part, Twitter gets dibs. All right. So let's get started. So last week I had a little bit of an announcement, meaning I was gonna start doing these Tuesdays at 7. So I set a time and a date. So every Tuesday at 7 p.m. you can find me on this very channel. And yeah, so that was a bit of an upgrade. And now I got another upgrade. Check this out. So yes, I've upgraded to a an actual streaming software. So it'll look kind of cool. I have some things that you'll see, some graphics that will roll out, and the more comfortable I get with this whole thing, the better. I told you guys this whole experience was gonna improve. So I'm a man of my word. So it will. And now I have a lot of time on my hands, given the current climate with life on lockdown here in New York City. So yeah, expect this whole experience to be improving. I know it's been a little bit slow, but it's moving. So yeah. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it. By the way, I've been taking sort of questions last minute. I will be doing a little bit less of that just because it requires you know a little bit of preparation to do these now that I have the streaming software. So yeah, let's get right into it. 1 second. Huh. No, it's not popping up. Weird. Can you guys see it on your end? See, I expected this. Let's see here. What are we drinking? No, a Negroni. So it is Campari. Well, yeah, I used Campari, gin, and vermouth. One of my favorite cocktails. Mm, all right, there we go. So, first question by the Seaside. Shouts out to the Seaside. Not MMA related, but what's one thing you didn't think you would enjoy during this quarantine? Drinking every day. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, there's been several things that I've enjoyed during quarantine. One, I mean, I've always worked from home, so I've always spent a good amount of time at home. And let's just leave the question up so people can see it. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I guess like you always have time to do things, and there are always things that are not urgent that you can actually go on your entire life and not tackling just tiny little things, home improvements that I've done, even stuff for my own YouTube channel that I've kind of put off, and I'm like this is not really necessary. I can run it without it. But it just, perfection is in the details. So certainly taking care of that because at some point you get tired of playing Fortnite, FIFA, and watching movies. Um, so yeah, I've been doing little things like that, home improvements, fix some stuff around the house that needed to get fixed. And now this, see, we got graphics and things, and this whole experience will improve. So I've had time to take care of things that I wanted to do, but you just put off because they're not urgent. But I would say I wouldn't trade that for freedom to go outside. I do miss regular life. I miss people. You know, I see a lot of people in the quarantine, especially like my friends in Miami. They have big houses and not necessarily big houses, but over in Florida, having a 3 bedroom house is very normal for a family. So they got a garage. Some people have a pool space to work out. I'm stuck in an apartment here in New York City. So that kind of has gotten a bit of my nerves. So I go on bike rides whenever I'm kind of going crazy or anything like that. but yeah, it sucks. It sucks. But there are some positives with it. I would say Seaside. But overall, it's a pretty shitty experience. But hey, this is what we got to do as responsible citizens of the U.S. and to protect others, especially the people that are much older than us. And I say us because I think most of the people that watch this are between like 18 and 34. Like at least that's what YouTube says. So so yeah, man. Long story short, it's shitty, but it's got some positives. But hey, this is what we got to do. So it is what it is. All right. Question number 2. And by the way, the questions this week were pretty good. Yeah, I got to say, I was pretty impressed with what you guys were asking. All right. The Executioner 91, the homie returns. How's your relationship with fighters? How has your relationship with fighters been affected by the current situation? Hawani says a lot of fighters feel the media has turned their backs on them by making them look bad for wanting fights. Your take? So I haven't exactly I've consumed some content that Ariel has created. Not all. I haven't exactly heard what he had to say about this specific situation about fighters feeling like the media has turned their back on them. But just based on what you're saying, I'll base this whole. I'll leave the question up again. Based on what you're saying, I'll just base the question on that. So again, just to be clear about this, full transparency, I don't know exactly Ariel's point. So I'm just responding to yours, which I hope you're being on point about that. But yeah, man, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to remember, I can definitely see why the fighters would feel that way. But at the end of the day, you got to remember, we're not media. You're supposed to have, and this is something that's, and I'll do a parentheses right now. I've noticed with the amount of news that has come out, in the last few days, and just the type of news as well. I've noticed that a lot of people do not understand what the media is for. They grew up obviously consuming media, news media. They know that they give you information, but I don't really think people really realize what journalists and what journalism is for in this country. In this country, journalism is the only business protected by the Constitution. The only business. Why? Because journalism is very important to the democracy. Journalism is the watchdog that keeps the powers in checks. So, as a journalist, I have to ask certain questions. It is my job. If I don't ask them, I'm not doing my job correctly, and that is questions that have are kind of rough to ask some fighters. They say they want to fight. You'd be like, okay, well, have you heard of the guidelines from the experts? Are you aware that you can contract coronavirus by getting on a plane, going elsewhere, fighting someone, get contact with someone, and then returning back to home and to regular life? Are you aware of all of this? We have to ask those type of questions. I kind of don't like it because as you mentioned, it puts you in a bit of an awkward and uncomfortable situation, and a lot of these people that you interview over time, you become friendly with and you get to know them. But it's our job. So just as their job, it's to fight. I don't expect them to be like. Not that I don't expect them, but it wouldn't surprise me that fighters want to fight. I understand it's their job, but they also got to understand that my job is sometimes to ask the tough questions when needed. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. At least for my part, I feel like I've covered my bases on that end. Just a few examples. I've interviewed Jairzinho Rosenstruck several times, and we've gotten stories up on MMAJunkie.com. And he was campaigning to headline UFC 249 with the interim title against Francis Ngannou, the heavyweight, that is, of course. And yeah, I mean, I asked him all that and thoughts on Ngannou and why do you want that and all that. But I also had to include the questions, and that had to go in the story. You do know that this is going against the guidelines that the government is giving us, and and then he gave me his answer, and you can check out the answer on MMAJunkie.com. So I hope they also understand what the media is for. But that's definitely something that I've noticed in this time, that people, news media is not what you like. So they reported this, I don't like that, you shouldn't report that. No, we're there to report the truth and information. So yeah, I can definitely see why the fighters feel that way, but they also got to understand this is our job. And I want to make this very clear because somebody asked me on Twitter like earlier in the week, and also I've seen a few comments like, "Oh, we shouldn't bash fighters." I've never bashed a single fighter for wanting to take a fight during this climate. I have not. The only comments that I've made, and for those that have followed me on Twitter, have been about the UFC's decision to continue events, which I'll get to that later, as it's asked in a later question. But look at Bellator. Do you see fighters? Do you see any Bellator fighter campaigning for cards that do not exist? Oh, put me on that Bellator 241 card. I want to be on that. Of course not. It's canceled. It's non-existent. Why would anybody lobby to be on a fight that doesn't exist? Because it doesn't exist. So the problem is not the fighters. If the slot is available, if a date and a card is available for them to fight on, and they need money, it's 100% reasonable for even against the guidelines. It's somewhat understandable for fighters wanting to fight. I do not blame them. A lot of people that that are staying home were because they were told to stay home, and businesses have closed. Like the government literally had to tell restaurants, you have to close unless you can do delivery. You cannot have people inside. So the delivery people, they're making money, but waitresses and waiters, they're not. And I guarantee you, and also bartenders, and I guarantee you, if the government didn't roll out that law, but they still had the recommendations, a lot of people would be bartending. A lot of people would still be serving tables. So again, this is a very similar situation to the fighters. I don't blame them. They got to pay rent. They got to provide for their families. But once, the government rolled that out, you're non-essential. You can't go bartend. You can't go wait tables. So now you got to be home. And then now the government is issuing $1,200 to everybody, and you can apply for unemployment. And there's other benefits out there that are trying to help people through these tough times. So yeah, I mean, if the UFC, I guarantee you, if the UFC paid every single fighter of the postponed cards, they'd be like, guys, I know you guys want to fight, but it's just a tough situation right now. Here's some money. Maybe not your win money, but your show money. Or I don't know, maybe all of it. I don't know. Or like Bellator did, they paid in full. I guarantee you they wouldn't be asking for fights. Sure, part of their competitive spirit would want to fight, but their want to fight would be, in my opinion, I think it would be much less. Why? Because their bases are covered financially. So I'm sure the competitor in there wants to get in there and fight, but hey, I got the money to pay rent or whatever. But once you add that extra layer, then I can definitely see a scenario where they see an opportunity and they want to jump on them. But yeah, to answer your question, again, I've interviewed some fighters, and when I have to ask those questions, is always a little weird, but that's my job, and I try to be the best that I can at my job, and I will continue to do that. Not only with this situation, but if other situations arise in the future. I hope that I stick by my journalistic ethics and I ask what should be asked. So yeah, to answer your question, but yeah, it's definitely an awkward situation. It's an awkward situation for everybody. I wrote an article from an interview on MMA Junkie Radio that Gorgeous George and the Goes did with Ray Longo, and he himself also admitted that he's been put in awkward situations because he has a gym, he has to close it, but fighters still have fights booked. And he I think his quote was something, I'll pull it up right now. His quote was something like, and this is if you actually listen to the interview, he's got that Ray Longo's got that Long Island accent, so it's actually, the way he said it, like you could see that line being in a movie or something. Give me a second. But by the way, a great opinion. He's actually not campaigning, but he wishes, that's what he said, that the UFC canceled events. And he said, look, even if they don't cancel events, at least the New York guys, take care of the New York guys, because New York is tough. And I'm telling you, I live 4 blocks from a hospital that way, and very good chance that you might hear several ambulances, sirens throughout this broadcast, this stream. So his exact quote was, so he's talking about Matt Frivola here, who has a fight, I believe, deep in April, like April 25th or something like that. He says, I let him in the gym, which I probably shouldn't do, Ray Longo said. It's just him and another guy sparring, but it puts everybody in an awkward position because I really don't want to do it. But then again, I want to see the kid get some work. That was my fake New York accent. So it just kind of sucks, man. But yeah, that's for everybody that's put in these awkward situations where you got to do your job. So yeah, to answer your question, I know I went on a bit of a rant there, but the Executioner 91, it is an awkward situation, but it is my job to ask those things. And at the end of the day, we can be as friendly as we want with fighters and people we interview, but at the end of the day, our job goes over that, and you still have to ask the tough questions and report what they said. That's it. All I'm doing is, you got to hold people accountable, right? All right. Question number 3 by J Film at 38. Hopefully I said that right. Can UFC go on without commission? Would that affect fighters' pro records? There's a very simple answer to that, and the answer is yes. They actually do that often, believe it or not. When they go to foreign countries, a lot of those countries sometimes don't have commissions that oversee combat sports. So the UFC acts as their own commission, and usually they just abide by whatever the latest rules and regulations are. So yeah, they've had plenty of experience doing that as far as being their own commission. So that's nothing new as far as them going somewhere foreign. Sometimes they go to a foreign country. For example, when they went to Chile, that's when Kamaru Usman fought Damian Maia. And the co-main event was Tatiana Suarez, Alexa Grasso, if I'm not mistaken. Chile didn't have a combat sports commission, so what they did is they used the UFC, the Brazilian commission. So the Brazilian commission actually overseed that event in Chile, and they brought all their officials, judges, referees, etc., over to Chile. So when the UFC is their own commission, they just usually bring you'll see the regular US referees that you're accustomed to seeing, in regular events and stuff like that. But yeah, Brazil has its own commission. Over in Europe, they do as well. For the most part, most countries, right, that have MMA. I mean, Europe's pretty advanced as far as that's concerned. But yeah, there are some countries like you go for the first time, like Argentina, Chile, and others. I think even in China, I think they were their own commission. I don't know if that's changed now with the growth of MMA there. But yeah, and as far as affecting their pro record, it's still a professional fight that they sanction themselves, so it doesn't really affect them in that end. Like, it still counts, and they have licenses and all that. I think when it doesn't count is like if I were to set up, say, a fight on my rooftop, and I called my neighbors, I'm like, yo, show up. I can't be like, yo, this guy that knocked this guy out in my rooftop, he's want to know as a pro because I said so. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, as far as that, the UFC has their bases covered. They can go on without commission, and to be clear and transparent, they have done it for many, many years before in the past about being their own commission in places that don't have a commission. So that wouldn't be an issue. All right. Thoughts on the morality of pressing on with UFC 249 amid a global pandemic? Renmark asks. Yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. I've been on so I started quarantine last the first Thursday of March. What day is it today? Today's Tuesday. So yeah, this upcoming Thursday is going to be an entire month that I've been on lockdown. I've only gone out, I think, like 4 or 5 times, to the supermarket, a few times to ride my bike, and that's about it. Um, and yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm craving sports. I miss sports. I miss fights. I miss watching live sports. There's nothing like live sports. Live sports are awesome. And on that sense, I'm not gonna lie to you. If I'm being 100% honest, part of me is a little happy that there's fights going on. But at the same time, my own pleasure of entertainment doesn't surpass the safety of others. So I to be honest, I don't think it should be happening. I do recognize that the UFC is taking precautions. So at least there's that. They are doing something. Let's also acknowledge that it's not like they're not doing nothing, right, or anything. They are doing something, right? There's not going to be any public. From what Dana White said in his interview with Brett Okamoto of ESPN, it seems there's going to be media, but not a whole lot. It's going to be selective media. I don't know who's going to go. But so there's that. And I encourage you guys to go check out my interview with Gilbert Burns on MMAJunkie.com. You can check it out on their site or on their YouTube. And I was talking to Durino, and I was like, asking him how the event was, fighting in an empty arena and all that. And he actually went into great detail about the operation of the UFC, on how, they brought each fighter on separate vans, and all these other things. And they would make sure that as soon as a fighter left, the other was allowed to go in the arena. And the way they whole did it, it didn't make my opinion change as far as the UFC that the UFC shouldn't put on events, but it certainly made me feel a little better, because it did sound like it was a very smooth operation. And also talking to my former colleague Guilherme Cruz, shouts out to Guilherme, I love that guy, the Brazilian beast. Media wasn't even allowed in the arena. They were in a hotel, in a hotel lobby or room. I don't really know, but separate. And they would take fighter by fighter individually for post fight scrums. So there are measures involved, and that needs to be acknowledged as well. But at the end of the day, the guidelines are, to keep distance. And the Association of Ringside Physicians actually issued a statement, which reads as follow. Um, the Association of Ringside Physicians have been actively following the recommendations of the CDC, as well as other professional medical societies concerned with the spread of COVID-19 or novel coronavirus. Sporting events across the world have been canceled in response to the increased risk of infection and transmission by participants, fans, officials, and support staff. It is our recommendation that all combat sports events be postponed until further notice. This includes any events, regardless of the number of people involved. Any combat sports taking place during this global pandemic places athletes, officials, anyone else involved in the event under unnecessary risk of infection and transmission of COVID-19. In addition, combat sports athletes often require medical attention after the bout. This is something very important. And we do not wish to see any additional strain on an already overwhelmed medical system. We continue to monitor the ever-evolving situation, and our thoughts continue to be with those who have been and will be affected by the disease. So yeah, man, as far as the morality, everything, you hear the experts. I'm no coronavirus expert, so who do I have to listen to? The experts. And the experts say don't go out, so I don't go out. The experts say, there shouldn't be any sports, there shouldn't be any contact. So that obviously involves this UFC 249 event. I think, and again, this could very well happen where they have the fights and nobody tests positive for COVID-19. It could happen. I also got to acknowledge that as well. But you're gambling here. And what's the gamble? People's lives and health. And, there's nothing more important than life and health. So yeah, man, it's certainly a tricky situation. I will definitely be covering the event, not in person, but I guess online. Because it is my job. Also, something that somebody wrote on my YouTube channel, one of the comments was like, "Oh, you're a hypocrite because you'll end up watching the fights anyways." Well, it's my job. It's like saying if CNN is against country A, or name any news media outlet, going to war with country B. Let's say the journalists there do not agree with the war, and there should be a more peaceful manner on resolving the issue, but they go to war anyways. Does the whole news channel just shut down operations and go, we're not covering the war? You guys are not going to know jack shit because we're against it. No, it's their job to do so, whether they agree with it or not. So I will be covering UFC 249 whether I agree with it or not. So again, there are many concerns about this. One is the risk of infection, right? That somebody gets infected. I'm not really concerned for the fighters because for the most part, the oldest fighters in their early 40s for the most part. But really, all fighters are mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s. They're a fairly young group of people, which we know are not really greatly affected by the virus. They can get pretty sick, but and some have even died. But for the most part, it affects the elderly or people that have a compromised immune system. So I'm not worried about them, but I'm worried about them spreading it to others. That's the bigger issue here. And I think at this point, everything's so new and the landscape is changing so fast and every day that it's just better to kind of wait back and see what happens. And once we have a more stable situation, then maybe we can take some risks, because life does got to return to normal at some point, right? For example, if you look at China, I have a good friend of mine in from college. We both had a Portuguese class together. He's an English teacher now in China, and I was talking to him, and life returned to normal about a week or two ago. And they're using these like scanning codes on their phones, and everywhere they go, the scanning codes reveal how long you've been in lockdown or quarantine, basically. And literally, you're not allowed in a restaurant, or you're not allowed in a building, etc., if they scan your code and it says you haven't been on lockdown for a certain amount of time. So they're taking certain precautions. But again, their government has a lot of leeway on what they can do and not do. So I don't know if that's the case here, and that can't be the case here in the U.S. Just given the fact that we're the way our government works. So so yeah, man, there will be, and there's still cases popping up. So there will be a time where this thing's still out there, and we still have to somewhat live a normal life, and some things will return to normal. That could be sports. But again, China has been dealing with this for a very long time, so they kind of they're measuring the situation right now. Like, hospitals are almost maxed out. This is very new. We The cases keep popping up, deaths keep popping up. So I think the best thing to do is just react, just sit out and react. That's sort of my opinion. And they bring up an interesting point, the Association of Ringside Physicians. For example, I recently spoke to Jared Gordon, and he was telling me about his recovery from a broken orbital bone when he fought Charles Oliveira, I believe, like last year, sometime in like November or September. What if that happens to a fighter on that card? Would they go to a hospital and get surgery, and risk getting corona over there? Or would you be taking a doctor that's supposed to be helping people out from corona and putting them in nurses to do the surgery? You know what I'm saying? So at this point, because even like my interview in Spanish with Juan Espino, he was telling me, like, the stories are not even about corona. Like, some people get into a car accident, and there's no doctors to take care of them in Spain, so they just die at the door of the hospital, or you get cut and get a bad infection or whatever. So right now, everyone just needs to kind of remain put. That's what the experts are telling us. So you just gotta trust them. But yeah, man, it's definitely a weird situation. But yeah, I don't agree with it, but here we are again. But again, I also said this in my video reaction that I did of Tony Gagey for the interim title in the UFC 249. Moving on, you can check that out after the stream. But I basically said, man, I forgot what I was saying. I said something along the lines of like, yeah, completely lost my train of thought. I'll get back to it if I remember. What was I saying about the morality in this global pandemic? Remind me in the chat. Where was I going with this? I know, dude. I know. I mean, I've been almost a month in lockdown. I'm going crazy here. I'm actually probably gonna get a dog because it's needed at this time. But anyways, hopefully that answered your question, Ren Mark. I appreciate you submitting that via Twitter. Let's go on to the next question. So, Jesus Magdaleno asks, who do you think matches up better against Khabib, Tony or Gaethje? So yeah, if you follow me long enough, I've made cases that I want to see both guys fighting Khabib. To me, those are the two most interesting challenges for Khabib at 155. So whoever wins here is gonna probably fight Khabib next, right? You never know, but most likely. And either guy, at least we know that either guy is gonna present a problem. Let's say Gaethje would have actually ended up fighting McGregor, and the winner of that would have fought for the belt against Khabib. We already know that as good as Conor McGregor is, his style is from the previous fights that we've seen Khabib in, his style is not necessarily the type of style that's built to give Khabib some tests, because we've seen it. Khabib's undefeated. Now Gaethje, that's an interesting one. Now, same thing with Ferguson. I mean, they both offer things that in my opinion, and I could be wrong about this, we will only find out until the fight rolls through and we actually see it play out. In my opinion, they offer things that Khabib hasn't seen, which is with Ferguson is fighting off your back. Once Khabib takes you down, it's usually game over. But that could be the case by the same thing by said about Tony Ferguson. Once you take him down, it's over because he can submit you or he can slice you up with his elbows. I mean, ask Kevin Lee. He was a victim of that, and so many other fighters have taken massive beatings while being on top, which is ridiculous. So that's very interesting as well. Also, his jiu-jitsu is good, and he can wrestle. Believe it or not, Tony Ferguson can wrestle. Plus, he has a high output, high cardio. So if he actually needs to tie up with Khabib and go one-on-one, he won't wear as other fighters have worn out in the past, say a McGregor. Um, and from a Gaethje perspective, Gaethje is just a wild man. He brings, he's willing to take risks, which is something you need to do against Khabib because you do know he's gonna take you down at some point. So you do know that the time that you have on your feet, you got to make the most of it. And what better fighter than Justin Gaethje that does that? I mean, the guy is an opportunist. The guy is every time he's on the feet, he's throwing, he's catching you. So and he's throwing hard too. So that's important as well. Plus, the guy has a pretty good wrestling resume, background, which we really haven't seen much in the UFC. But I'm curious to see how he does actually wrestling with Khabib. But if you look at his body and just the way he's wired, he's kind of like he's got, I don't know. When I see him, like his body dynamic kind of reminds me of a Vanderlei Silva a little bit, like a young one, where it's just kind of all like fast twitch muscle, and they're all kind of just. And I just feel like he'd be very good at scrambles, and I feel like he might not be able to out wrestle Khabib, but like he can scramble his way out of positions. He can scramble, and defend takedowns. Maybe get taken down for a second and get right back up. He moves so much, and he's like a ball of energy that it's hard for me to see someone actually pinning him down and holding him there. So both fighters present very good challenges. In my opinion, I think Tony Ferguson is the guy that presents the most interesting challenge because I have no doubt in my mind that Khabib is able to take everybody down. But again, when you take Ferguson down, the fight's just getting started. So to me, that's the fight to make, and that's why it was so big. The guy's also 12-0. I believe Gaethje's on off the top of my head, I believe he's on a 3-fight win streak, and before that, he had 2 back-to-back losses, if I'm not mistaken. So everything tells me that Tony Ferguson is the guy that could present the most problems to Khabib. But again, that's just my opinion in theory. I don't, we don't know that for a fact. And Gaethje does present interesting problems. But I think the more interesting, in my opinion, are Tony Ferguson's, to answer your question, Jesus. Appreciate your question. All right. Michael Terrell's back. Shout out to Michael Terrell. I start already, many of you I start recognizing already. So it's kind of cool. I appreciate the support. Thank you, Michael. If given the opportunity to be the only media member at UFC 249 without travel logistics taken care of by the UFC, would you go? So first of all, MMA Junkie would pay for that. I would never, ever, ever, ever go to an event where the promotion is paying me to go cover it, because that is a conflict of interest. I would never do that, ever. So let's say actual USA Today, MMA Junkie, were like, okay, yeah, we're gonna send somebody out there. I would say probably not, because I'm still not for sure, not convinced 100% that the event is gonna go down. Although it seems that it is. The location still seems to be undetermined. And on top of that, it's I don't want to go somewhere where I don't know where I'm going. Also, I'm out here in New York. You think I'm gonna go to JFK, LaGuardia? Dude, so many people have gotten corona from those airports. Like, I'm telling you, New York is bad. Listen to that interview with Ray Longo. He puts it into, and he's out there in Nassau, which is a little more suburban, so less city. I'm telling you, shit here is bad, bro. And yeah, I mean, he said a story that was pretty sad. One of his friend's son passed away for other reasons outside COVID-19. He didn't specify, but they couldn't have a funeral for him. They couldn't have a funeral for him. That is the saddest thing in the world, and that is happening in Spain. People are dying, and only like 1 or 2 people are allowed to go to the funeral. And a lot of people that their relatives die, they can't go out, and they don't want to go out, and they shouldn't go out because, it's a risk. They could get COVID-19 and have the same fate. So a lot of people are just dying alone. and like Ray Longo was saying, dude, there's people outside saying goodbye to people that are passing away, their relatives, friends, whoever, outside of the hospital using walkie-talkies because they can't interact with them. That is depressing. That is extremely sad. That's probably why I drink every day. Not every day, but fairly often. Dude, I spend like before this whole shit hit the fan, I spent like $120 on liquor. Um, it's like 2 bottles of wine, a big ass bottle of gin, Campari, vermouth. I got a bottle of aguardiente. I got a bottle of 1800. I got this like peach brandy that like some girl left here at a party, like one party that I had. The thing tastes horrible. That's literally the last resort. If I run out of everything else, that'd be the last thing to go. It's disgusting. Um, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. But no, I wouldn't go. Here in New York, things are bad. I wouldn't get on a plane in JFK or LaGuardia. I just don't feel comfortable. And I still have doubts whether that event is going to go down or not. It seems like it is, but again, this is an unprecedented territory, and the climate is changing very rapidly. Days are an eternity. Like, who knows how this thing's gonna look a week from now? It might look a lot better, and maybe I would feel a lot better about the situation then. But it could also look a lot worse. So I have no idea. From now on till April 18th, it's 11 days. Still a good amount of time. So we'll see. But no, I wouldn't go. Last thing I want to do is hop on a plane. Even like my parents were like, "Oh, come down to South Florida. Here you're more comfortable. You have more space. Blah blah." But this thing had already kicked off, and my parents are in their early 60s. There's no way I'm gonna go and like potentially expose them because we know that this is asymptomatic. So I could very well have like a symptom, and I could very well have COVID-19 and not show a symptom, and then what? Get them infected, and then they have complications. Dude, I would not be able to live with that. So I was like, nope, I'm staying home. I'm staying here in New York. All right. I forgot what number question I was. So, okay, so I was in 7. 8 Paths of Wokeness. He's back. I posted this question to Luke too, my buddy Luke Thomas. But what if Dana somehow pulls this off without anyone getting sick and somehow gets good press? Dana could get the narrative of Americans enduring and overcoming in the face of hard times. Would you continue to criticize them for continuing events? Again, that's 100% possible. The fact that UFC 249 could go down and there could be absolutely 0 cases of COVID-19 stemming out of that event. 100% possible. It's possible. But again, what are you gambling here? You can't also say that it is impossible for anyone to get COVID-19 throughout all that transaction, flights, etc., interaction with other people. You can't say that either. So you gotta acknowledge both sides of the coin here. To me, is like, what's the gamble? The gamble is the health and safety of others, and to me, that trumps life, trumps everything, entertainment, sports, everything. So for me, it is not worth having. I mean, so I would still, again, I would probably feel much better if the event rolls out and then we see all these precautions and it's ends up being super safe and they do COVID-19 testing, because that's another thing. The UFC hasn't revealed that they're gonna test the fighters, and that's important. I mean, if I'm gonna fight someone, and if I'm gonna get, first of all, I wouldn't fight someone, but if I'm gonna get in contact with someone, I'd like to know if they have COVID-19 or not. And So yeah, man. I would feel a little better about it if nobody tested and the operation runs pretty smooth, but I'd still be against it. Because in these times, like, I mean, look at every other sport. Look at every other sport here in the U.S., in Europe, everywhere else. It's being canceled. It's being postponed. Because that's just a move right now. That's just a move. And again, I don't know how long the situation is gonna last. Maybe I think it should just be played by ear. Okay, no events for April. Maybe May, but let's just see how May looks. But again, as of now, the situation's not great. So I don't know. But I would feel better about it, of course. But I still would be against any, and again, this is not any rant against the UFC or anything like that. I would be against any public gathering, any sporting event, really. If you, I follow soccer too. I don't know if you guys do, but so football, really. Soccer is the American term, but tons of football players in Europe are testing positive for COVID-19. Pep Guardiola's Man City's manager, his mom died of COVID-19. Pepe Reina is a legend, a goalkeeper legend. He had coronavirus, and he detailed the way it went down, and it was just horrible. He said he thought he was gonna die. And this is a healthy individual in his 30s that plays soccer and is in tip top shape. He's now in Aston Villa, I think. Um, but yeah, man, I don't know. But thanks, A Passive Wokeness. And you're still out there campaigning. You're still out there carrying the flag that Dustin Poirier is ducking Dan Hooker, and you keep asking me about that. We disagree, but again, I already addressed it, so you already know my thoughts on that. But I appreciate the passion. All right, Ka at Curtis CPT again. Another usual around these areas. Are you surprised this kickoff event of UFC 249 isn't free on ESPN? They must be itching for live sports content maybe. Plus, who wants to drop pay-per-view in an economy like this? Yeah, I don't know, man. Certainly, I'm not entirely surprised that you know it's not free. I thought they would charge something for it. I am surprised. I think they're going with the full price, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. I should do some research, but I haven't heard anything that it's going to be reduced price or anything like that. And you're right, it's tough. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people are getting furloughed, and every day people are losing their jobs, and the economy is getting worse and worse. So certainly not an ideal situation, but this is kind of just starting. Like people that lost their jobs usually just like recently lost their jobs, so maybe they have some savings. There's also those $1,200 you can also that the government's sending. You can also apply for unemployment. I would still suspect that there would be a buy rate. People would still buy. You know, again, this is not thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars. This is what, like $60. So I would suspect people would still buy even in this climate. Now, a month from now, if we're a lot of people are still not able to return to their jobs, where $60 at the grocery store goes a long way. I mean, that can get you fed for a whole week. So it depends what you buy, but yeah. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised, but not entirely. Not entirely, to be honest. But yeah, bless you if you lost your job or you're in furlough or something. Certainly not easy times, but just know that we're all in this together. So it's not like if you did lose your job and you're watching this, it's not like you lost your job while the economy's up and running and everything's normal. No, we're all in this together, and just know that it is normal. Also, even people, I know this is kind of random and outside of that, but even people that are having like mental health issues and feel sad and depressed, like um, certainly do things to try to feel better, but also understand that it's normal. I mean, it's a global pandemic. I mean, things are bad out there, so it is as a human being is normal to feel those emotions with everything that is going on. So yeah. Now the executioner already asked the question, but this was I didn't really understand what you meant by this, but I'll still address it. I don't fault Khabib for his decision to go to Russia, but I kind of agree with the view that he blew it strictly from a PR standpoint by sending mixed messages on his position on UFC 249, despite what DC says. I don't know what DC says. He also gave Dana all the cards. Who we all know wants Khabib Conor too. Your take. So a bit of a complex question there. I don't really know exactly what you're asking. Um, but I would say this: Habib is in all his right. Look, there isn't a location at the time. There wasn't I mean, there still isn't. I mean, that we know of. Somewhere in the west coast of the U.S. That's what they say. And an island. Who God knows where that island is. Isn't that crazy? That shit's like Enter the Dragon shit. Yeah, just fly out to an unknown island and have a martial arts tournament. That's what Enter the Dragon was all about. I should rewatch that movie. By the way, if you haven't watched any of the Bruce Lee movies, those are awesome. Not only because they're cool and the fight scenes are actually pretty cool, not corny like the ones you see today, but most of them were shot with like what in the 70s and 80s. So like it's not even shot in digital. It's like film, so it looks cool. The styles are cool. Like aesthetically, like it's a really nice movie. Yeah, movies, there's so many of there's several of them, so yeah, I encourage you to watch them. But anyways, no, I don't fault them at all. Like he, and again, Habib has a lot of money. He's a superstar. So why fight in those conditions? Why fight in conditions where you can't get a full training campaign? And it's not just Habib saying that. Ray Longo, world class coach, is saying that. That was literally the story that I wrote in MMA Junkie. He said, "I hate seeing guys go in there compromised. They're definitely, these are his words, definitely not getting near a normal training camp. 100% true. You see guys training in their garages by themselves, hitting the bag, running, lifting some dumbbells. They can't go to the gym. How is that professional? You know, now if you need money and you're maybe a lower tier fighter, you know, or you just need money in general, or just want to fight in general, I understand that. But Habib is at a point in his life where he doesn't need money. So why fight under these bad circumstances where you don't know location, where you can't get a proper training campaign, where you're not sure if you're going to get COVID-19 or not once you step foot on a plane and go to that event, wherever that is? It just doesn't. He's the UFC lightweight champion of the world. He's one of the best fighters in the world. He's a superstar, one of the biggest superstars the UFC has. So no, he's totally in his right to be like, I'm going to Russia and you see how it plays out. And then it just happens to be that the Russian government issued travel bans and now he can't go anywhere. But he was down. He was down to fight. You can't. One of the last people you can accuse of ducking anyone is Khabib. That guy, man, that guy is undefeated and he's fought everybody and he wants to fight everybody. He's all about legacy. I'm sure he wants to make money, yeah, but legacy and proving he is the best fighter in the world means a lot to him. And yeah, by no means you can't fault Khabib. And if you think it was a little bit of a PR mess, is because this whole event has been a mess. I mean, we didn't get a location until a couple of days ago, and we're 2 weeks out from the event. If you don't think that's messy, then I don't know what messy is. We didn't even know what the fight card was going to be, and the event's 2 weeks away. Usually these roll out months before. We know the location months before. So yeah, I mean it's crazy times. So it's a crazy environment out there. All right, I should do this instead, but I'm by myself, so it's all good. All right, so that does it for the Twitter questions. I appreciate everybody that submitted questions via Twitter. It allows me to fill in the description and the title, and that way you guys know the topics ahead of time, and I know the topic as well, and I can give you a little bit of more elaborate answers, although they're still kind of on the fly. Like I don't do a whole lot of research, to be honest, but at least I know, and they're kind of brewing in my head a little bit. So as you know, we have the Twitter questions ran long today, so we have about 12 minutes for the hour mark, which is usually as long as I that's usually how long I do these videos for. I might go a little bit over. Sometimes I do a little bit less depending on the amount of questions. So at this point in time, if you submitted questions via Twitter, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Now we shift over to the live chat, where if you didn't have an opportunity to submit a question via Twitter, you will have an opportunity now. So I usually do these, just roll down the timeline and do these chronologically. So first come, first serve basis. Because the Twitter questions ran long today, I don't know if I'll tackle all of them. We have 10 minutes. I might go over 15. I don't know. But this needs a refill soon, so I got to bounce. So yeah, let's get right into it. And I hope you guys are all doing well. And I don't want to get too like emotional on here or whatever, but I've been calling a lot of friends and family members that I don't talk to on a super regular basis just to check up on them. So I can't contact all of you guys, but hopefully you guys are doing all right. And if you guys aren't, then stay positive and just understand these are tough times. So it's normal to be a little roughed up, and I hope you and your families are all doing well. All right, Wreck Man Stan, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Danny Segura. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. Daniel York or Yorkie, still don't know. Hey, Danny, good to see you back. High five. High five. Danny, great to be here, man. All the best to you. Thank you. Hey, Danny and MA fans. Hey, Anonymous Dude 123. Interesting name. What are you drinking tonight? Yeah, I addressed that. Negroni. Negroni is one of my favorite cocktails. It's classy. It tastes good, but it's also has a very strong and it's almost acquired taste a little bit, but it definitely has a strong taste. You can't just chug it. So it's a good drink if you're just trying to chill. If you're going to the bar and you're trying to have a chill night, you get one of these type of drinks where it's like it tastes kind of bitter because of the Campari, or you can also use Aperol as well. It's within the same family. Aperol will be a little sweeter, but Campari is great. So you can't really down it. You just gotta sip it. So it gives you a nice little buzz all throughout, and you make sure you don't get drunk quick. Unlike other drinks, like all those sweet drinks, like margaritas and all those sugary drinks, like you can where they taste so good, you can just chug. Those are the dangerous ones. One, it will give you a badass hangover because of the sugar, and two, you can drink so many of them because they taste so good. This still tastes good, but I'm telling you, it's like a weird thing to explain. It tastes good, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't. Like it tastes good on small amounts. You can't chug it. If you chug this thing, you'll be coughing. You'll be throwing up. So yeah, it's a nice drink to just chill on and got not much to do, so just hang around the house and whatever. If you had to guess, where is the secret location for UFC 249? So, according to reports from Ariel Hawani, it's somewhere in the West Coast. I'm, I have a feeling I'm pretty sure it's going to be at an Indian reservation because, California, Nevada, like a lot of states are banning public gatherings, non-essential businesses, sporting events. That includes sporting events. So, I would assume this whole time the front runners were an Indian reservation or Florida, because Florida's a crazy ass state. Trust me, I've lived there. I grew up there my teenage years. Um, but yeah, so it's definitely not in Florida. That's not on the West Coast as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's gonna be in some Indian reservation. I don't know, but your guess is as good as mine. I guess we'll find out very soon. Um, it is the wildest up in the MMA world during this COVID-19 crisis. Yes, it is. Do you think Justin will actually get a title shot if he wins? Justin looks like a motivated and dangerous man. That is a fact. He is definitely a dangerous man, and he definitely looks motivated as well. Well, that man wants gold, and he had a bit of a mentality switch. If you look at like his old interviews when he first joined the UFC, he said something like, these weren't his exact words, but the thought was, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I'm just here to put in exciting fights, and you better enjoy me because I got about 5-4 wars like these in my future. That was about what he said. In my career, like I don't expect to be fighting till I'm 40 or whatever. And somewhere along the line, I think it's when because he was undefeated when he entered the UFC. By the way, I coming up through MMA media, I got to cover. I saw when he won the World Series of Fighting lightweight belt, and I covered a lot of his fights in World Series, which was awesome. One of the good things about like when you first get into MMA media, like most of the events that you're gonna cover are local or like smaller events. And the cool thing is that you get to see a lot of like weird and crazy shit, but at the same time, you get to see a lot of guys come up, and then you see them in the UFC, and it's kind of nice, and it's cool. Like for example, one of the like my favorite fighters that I saw come up was Nico Price. He's from South Florida, or well, I think he's from like Tampa actually, but he fought a lot in South Florida because at the time, and I believe this promotion's still around, Fight Time Promotions. He fought a lot for Fight Time Promotions, and I would be there for every event. I probably went to like 10, 15 Fight Time Promotion events, maybe more, and I saw a lot of his fights. And dude, just as wild as he was, as he is in the UFC, he was there, and it was a smaller cage, and it was only like maybe like 1,000 people in the little arena at most. That was at the War Memorial Auditorium in Fort Lauderdale. So yeah, you get to see a lot of crazy shit. So yeah, I saw one of his fights. He fought this guy Michael Lilly. I don't know if he's still fighting, dude. That was one of the craziest fights I've ever seen in my life. I don't even know if it's on YouTube. It should be, but if you have time and if it is, and I'd like to watch it again. If somebody can find it, please send me a link. Nico Price versus Michael Lilly. Lilly is Lily, if I'm not mistaken. But that was a badass fight. And when I saw him when he fought in Tampa, who did he fight? I think he fought James Vick or somebody. He fought somebody. After the scrum, I went up to him. I'm like, "Yo, you remember me?" Blah blah. And we were talking for a little bit, and then I'm like, "Yo, remember when you fought Michael Lilly?" And his immediate response was, "Oh my God, Lilly!" Yeah, that's one of his best fights ever. Look that up if you have the chance. But anyways, what was I saying? I kind of went on a random rant there. Oh yeah, I mean, if he wins, look, Tony is the number one guy. After that, there's no clear. I mean, after that is Gaethje really, and then after that, there's really no clear contender right there. I mean, um, Charles Oliveira's coming up, Dan Hooker's coming up, Conor McGregor's still Conor McGregor. Mm, I guess that would be the only wild card. Apart from Conor McGregor, I don't see anybody skipping Gaethje if Gaethje were to win. But look, you beat a guy like Tony Ferguson. You stop a 12-fight win streak. You stop an unbeaten run for like 5-6 years. Um, you deserve to fight for the title next, 100%. He already deserves to fight for the title. But if he beats Tony, you have to fight for the title next. And you have an interim belt. I think they would make it. I mean, it would be really tough to slide Conor McGregor in there, and it'd be really hard to justify that. A lot of the times that people have gotten screwed over in that sense, there's usually enough wiggle room for you to like make a case there. So, but in this case, like if you beat Tony Ferguson, especially under this circumstances, you're a company man. You stepped up on short notice. You saved a pay-per-view event. I mean, I guess they could have put another fight instead of Tony Gaethje, but I mean, you still helped save a pay-per-view event. They got to give you the title next if you win. So yes, I don't see anyone skipping Justin Gaethje, Josh Edwards. I don't see anybody skipping Justin Gaethje if he were to beat Tony Ferguson. One, you beat Tony Ferguson. Two, you're an interim champion. So, yeah. All right. Scott Kelly, how pumped are you for UFC 249, Danny boy? Like I said earlier on this stream, I gotta be honest. I am looking forward to watching live sports. Again, and this is why I hate this. It makes me so split because this shouldn't be happening. It really shouldn't. It's against all government and expert guidelines on helping. And again, this is not about. We're all young here. Like all the fighters are young. I'm young. This is not about us. Like I could probably catch COVID-19 and it'll be like a strong flu, but I'll be all right. This is for others, dude. So yeah, man. I'm not gonna lie. I want to see some fights, but above that is the health and safety of others. So I'll watch them. I mean, it's my job, and I'm sure I'll enjoy them. But there's a lot of things that you enjoy and you probably shouldn't do. To answer your question, Scott Kelly. MC LJ1. What do you think of the entire UFC 249 card? It actually looks pretty good. Yeah, it's a good card. It's like any other stacked pay-per-view event that the UFC puts on. Namajunas versus Andrade, that's a good fight. You know what it is crazy, and the first person to point this out was Jed Mishu, my former colleague. Shouts out to that guy. He has crazy opinions. I don't agree with most of them, but every now and then, like you'd be like, huh, yeah, for sure. They actually put Greg Hardy and Jorgen De Castro above Jairzinho Rosenstruck and Francis Ngannou. Like what? That is the craziest thing in the world. But I understand. Obviously, Greg Hardy is I guess a big name in the sports world. I'm not much of an American football guy, so to me, Ngannou and Rosenstruck is a far more appealing fight, and to me, it should be above. But apparently, he's a big deal, right? So there's that, and also there's an advantage to I guess being bumped down because Jairzinho and Ngannou are going to be on the ESPN broadcast. So I assume a lot more people are going to watch the ESPN broadcast than the pay-per-view since there's no paywall. So yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there is an advantage to that, But yeah, just wanted to point that out. All right. Let's see. Question: Anonymous dude 123. You hear about Anthony Smith and his home invasion, insane. Glad him and his family are safe. Yeah. It's crazy. So I mean, I encourage you guys to check that out. But it was something like he was sleeping and his wife woke him up and she was all freaked out and she's like, "There's somebody in the house," and he's like, "What?" And he steps outside and like I think again I don't really know the whole story. Like I think there's some details that I was missing, but I think he might have gone downstairs and like turns the corner and like 15-20 feet from him is some stranger dude screaming at the top of his lungs, and then he had to fight that guy. That's scary as shit. That's so scary. Fuck that. Fighting an unknown man in the darkness, screaming, and you just woke up. Ugh. But thank God it's a UFC light heavyweight, a former title challenger. I feel bad for that guy. He probably got his ass whooped. Imagine breaking into a house and it just happens to be a UFC fighter's house. That's literally like worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. But yeah, I'm glad him and his family are safe. Crazy story. Creepy. Anonymous dude, I'm old then. No, you're not old. I consider old. No one's old. You're as young as you want to be. It's all in the mind. So I'm guessing you're above 34. It's all good, homie. I'll get there someday. Everybody will. Appreciate the support. And if I call people, don't I hope people don't get offended. There's nothing wrong with. I mean, it's just part of natural life, right? Aging. Let's see. Okay, I've crossed the hour mark here. It's 8 p.m. I'll answer a couple ones that I think haven't been answered. Hey Archer, what's up? Shouts out to Hey Archer. Dana said that he would bring some media members. Is anyone from MMA Junkie going? Not that I'm aware of at this point in time, but that's not to say that we're not sending anybody out there. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. Gilbert Burns is rising up. Yeah, he is. Man's looking good out there. Yeah, my man. Heart wants to watch UFC, but my mind says, this is off. In my opinion, yeah, that's how I feel too. Medical system is not overwhelmed. There's less handful of hotspots where the system is stressed. We were so many stupid comments without. No, it is. I mean, here in New York, shit's pretty. I mean, it's not even that. It's just the fear. You got to keep in mind, like everything that is being reported every day. It's we don't exactly know how far back is it, but due to the lack of testing, it doesn't accurately reflect the cases. There's a lot of people with coronavirus that goes unreported. For example, one of my very good friends, I'm pretty sure, and she believes, and so does everybody around her. She probably maybe had coronavirus because she had all the symptoms. She got high fevers, she got super sick, she got shortness of breath. Like it was bad. But they're recommending if it's not bad enough, do not go to the hospital. Why? Because you can risk getting someone infected. Plus, the resources that they would use on you could be used on someone that actually really needs them, someone who's actually in a life or death situation. She's my age. She's like what, 27, 26. So she was all right. And the fourth, it actually lasted exactly 2 weeks. So that's why she's pretty confident that it was probably corona. I don't know, but yeah, she was all right. But yeah, again, a lot of corona cases go unreported, and you know. We hear about the lack of ventilators and all this, and masks and everything. It's definitely a concern, man. That's my opinion, and from this is a comment from Vegan Suck, and from everything I've read, and by the look of your yeah, never mind. Yeah, true, young people die too. Yes, this is affecting everybody, but usually it's older people and people with already underlying conditions. But yes. Jesus. Yeah, I said Jesus. I mean, I said Jesus at the beginning, but I saw your last name, Magdaleno, so I said Jesus. So I pronounced your name right. All right, let's see what else is out there. Shit, I'm just gonna skip all these and go with what's live. What does this card do pay per views number wise, dude? I have no idea. I have no idea. With first of all, with the lack of heads up, right? Usually they announce these pay per view cards have a main event for months, and they promote it, and there's advertisement online, on TV, billboards, etc. This literally just announced 2 weeks ago. I mean 2 days ago. It's 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away. And but at the same time, everyone's home and consuming a shit ton of media. There's no live sports, so it would literally be the only live sporting event going on at the time. So I mean, there's so many new variables that it's really impossible for me to predict how well this pay per view would do. My hunch would say well, and that's why the UFC is pushing so hard if it was if it was going to be a financial disaster as far as like very low buys, I really don't think they would go through all this trouble of finding a private island and all this other stuff to host an event. So I assume they have enough information and metrics to believe that this is going to be it's going to do well. But who knows? Who the hell knows? No one knows anything in this climate. All right. Yeah, I think that's it, man. I'm kind of scrolling through the questions here. I think I answer everything. A lot of the questions that have been asked on your key. Okay, got you, Daniel. Your key. Thank you for the correction there. But yeah, I believe I answered everything. The questions that I'm seeing on the chat now, I already answered them on Twitter and whatnot. But yeah, so I think I got everything. Okay, here's a good one. Last one. Alex Howie asks, thoughts on Cody Garbrandt moving down or move to 125. So yes, for those that don't know, former UFC bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt announced that he was going to drop to 125 pounds, leaving his weight class of 135, where he became champion and really became Cody Garbrandt, right? Who he is today. I think it's good as long as he can make the weight. I believe, what was the card? There was a card where he fought, and also Demetrius Johnson fought on that card, and it ended up being the case. I believe that's when he fought Pedro Munoz. I'm not entirely sure. It might have been before that, but Demetrius Johnson and Cody Garbrandt were on the same card. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that might have been when Demetrius fought Ray Borg. I don't know. But either way, they were both on the same card, and they were doing this thing, and it was in California. California does this thing, the California Athletic Commission does this thing where they release the weights, I believe 24 hours after weigh-in. So the day of the fight, they release how much the fighter gained in weight. They do that because if you gain more, I believe, than 10%, and I might be wrong about this, you got to ask Mark Ramundi. He's the expert on this, but the information is out there. Let me look it up so I'm not just fucking guessing. Let's see. All right. Okay, wait. Let me first find the card that he fought. I believe it was anyway. So the whole point about why I say the Demetrius Johnson thing is because I believe their weight on fight day wasn't much different, and it kind of goes to show, and it's weird because he's got a big neck and a big head, and he looks pretty muscular. Like I would think he'd be like a good size for 35er, and I never thought he was undersized, but apparently the guy's very light, and there's a few cases like that, like people that look big but just weigh very little. I don't know if it's their frame or the bones that don't weigh as much, um, but yeah, man. Apparently the guy doesn't weigh a whole lot, and he can make 125. So as long as he can make 125 healthy. Okay, so yeah, the card was when Demetrius Johnson fought Henry Cejudo. This was UFC 227, and Garbrandt fought TG Dillashaw the second time when he was trying to regain his belt. So that's the same card they fought in, and their weight wasn't much different. I believe Henry Cejudo, who fought at 125, actually ended up weighing more than Cody Garbrandt, who fought at 135. I'm talking about the day of the fight. So it seems he can make 125. And look, if you can make it healthy, then why not? You'll definitely have a power advantage when you go down, and a size advantage over the guys. Maybe there's something lost in the speed, but Cody Garbrandt has pretty quick hands, so I don't think he'll be Again, he won't be as fast as he is at 135, but I don't think he'll necessarily be slow. So, and plus, there's nothing for him to lose. Is he ranked? I'm not sure, but he's in a 3-fight skid. It's not like you're holding a belt, or it's not like you're holding on to a number one contender position. A lot of fighters do that. For example, I spoke to Michael Chiesa, and I'm like, why move up to 170 now? And he's like, really, because I was in the top 10 at lightweight. Like, it took me a long time to get there. Like, why would I abandon that and start fresh? Like, I'm already there. So yeah, a lot of guys look into that. So at this point, look, you're on 3-fight losing streak. You're not number one contender. You're not champion. Fuck it, try 125, see what happens. And if you can make the weight healthy, there's more power to you. That doesn't say though that he is a better fighter at 125 than he is at 135. But let's find out. I think it's a something worth looking into. So yeah, drop to 125. I think that's a good move from Cody Garbrandt. All right, Alex Howie, I appreciate that question. That was a very good question. A bit under the radar, to be honest, because coronavirus, global pandemic, UFC 249, all this shit has kind of taken over the news cycle. But that is a story that it's certainly, not a huge one, but it's certainly a significant one that's kind of flying under the radar. So I appreciate you submitting that question. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to call it quits. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I told you guys this experience was going to get better. I wasn't just talking smack. We saw the graphics. You submit tweets. I'm going to show your tweet out there with your profile. So I appreciate everybody that submitted questions via Twitter. And just know that this whole experience will improve, and it will keep improving week in, week out. Again, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on this very channel. You can find me here. I appreciate all of you. Wash your hands. Stay safe. And yeah, that's all I got to say. Thank you.